feel like we need walk-on music, like pump it up, especially for the last one. Hi, everybody. My name is Molly McLean Sterling. I am super excited to be here, of course, and feel very honored to be able to close up the summit with all of you with this talk. So we'll just jump right in. I am really excited to talk about building your recipe for a culture of security. Anytime you see these green action bubbles on the page, that represents an action that you can take within your company. I would love to hear how you tweak and change them to fit into your own program. So if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please feel free to reach out and let me know how they're going. When I first started doing security awareness for Medtronic, one of the world's largest medical technology companies, I was a team of one doing a bunch of other things besides awareness. Show of hands, how many are a team of one? I see you. I feel you. You're doing great. Keep going. Thankfully, over the last 10 years or so, we have grown because we continue to show our value. And now I'm the director of global security culture. I have a team of 8, and we have 3 signature dishes: education and outreach, metrics and analytics, and stakeholder engagement. Anything that I talk about today can be used by a team of 1 or a team of many. It's all about adjusting the recipe. If you would indulge me for just a moment, I'd like you to conjure up some memories. Think about your favorite food. Think about the joy you feel and anticipation of getting to eat it. Think about the aromas that make your mouth water, and think about that last bite of satisfaction-induced surrender. On the flip side of that, think about your least favorite food. You're no way, not gonna touch that type of food. You might even physically withdraw in the presence of this food. Well, one of my mom's favorite foods is chocolate ganache cake. No idea if this is actually chocolate ganache cake, by the way. One of her least favorite foods, which can send shivers up the spine of all 8 kids in her family growing up, is liver and onions. Right? I see some of those. I'm so sorry. So sorry. When they found out they're having liver and onions for dinner, they would drag their feet. They would try to figure out ways of getting out of it. And it definitely didn't create a sense of family togetherness. The message of "you'll eat it, it's good for you" was the law of the land. Much like the authoritarian "sky is falling, do these things because we say so" messaging that has plagued security organizations for years. With this unhealthy messaging, people will drag their feet and figure out ways around security controls. So we have to build a better way. But before we start building our recipe, we have to figure out what we're going to cook. And that should be specific to your company. When you think about all of the things that we need to educate and influence on in cybersecurity, the scope is broad and it can feel a little overwhelming. And if you don't have the resources to whip up an 11-course meal, you'll need to focus on a few key dishes and expand from there. And even if you do have the resources to create an 11-course meal, your audience doesn't have the appetite for it. If we only have this tiny window of attention from people, we better be sure that we're focused on the biggest risk for that audience. When you are trying to narrow your focus, try not to get sucked into the hyped up news stories, especially on social media. Just because people are talking a lot about something on LinkedIn doesn't mean that it's the biggest risk for your company. Again, if we talk about all of the risks to all of the industries in all of the countries all over the world, we become white noise. In 2021, my husband and I went to this fantastic restaurant for our anniversary called Demi. This dining experience takes you through 11 courses. Each dish is so carefully crafted, meticulously perfect, every one more special than the last. You also get an origin story of every ingredient on the plate. So before you take a first bite, you hear a Shakespearean soliloquy about why this radish is sweeter than the other radishes because the way the light hits the soil in France or something like that. I don't remember any of it, but it's amazing and I would recommend it. But here's the funny part. I don't remember one specific thing I ate. These aren't even my pictures. I had to look some up on the internet. 11 courses of perfection, and I can't remember any of the details. I remember I had the best time with my husband. I remember being really impressed by the restaurant, but I can't remember the actual food. In our work, it's great if our stakeholders have a generally positive feeling about security. That can be really helpful. But if we throw so much information at them that the only thing that they can remember is security is important, we're not providing that much value. A culture of security happens one spoonful at a time. So here's that little take action bubble. These are things that you can try within your company, and these are things that we do within our company. So to narrow our focus, we work with our cyber threat intel team to give us specific threats and risks to our company. Now, not everybody has a team like that, so that's understandable. If you don't have a cyber threat intel team, go to your CCERT or even go to some of the other security leaders within your organization and ask them, what are our specific threats to us? That's what we want to focus on. Then the security alert protocol, happy to talk to anybody about that afterwards. This is basically what you would think of as an incident response plan, but we've created it specifically for communication and awareness with security. So we combine those two things, and that way we're able to focus on the biggest risks for the particular audiences. The other thing that I think is really important for everyone to do is sit down with your leadership and figure out what are your security culture norms. This puts some substance behind the word culture rather than just having it be a buzzword. So we sat down and talked about our objectives, talked about our risks, talked about our frustrations and our projects, and we came up with these three cultural norms: accountability, balance, and proactive. Knowing these things helps me align our strategy to address the biggest risks. So now that you have narrowed your focus to the risks specific to your company, that's what you're going to cook. Now you can build your recipe with foundational elements. Samin Nosrat is a James Beard Award-winning New York Times bestselling cookbook and Netflix series. She has those. And she has traveled the world exploring amazing dishes to find that these 4 elements are the foundation of every dish. Not every dish has the same recipe. The amount of ingredients and methods of preparation vary from dish to dish. We've heard about BJ Fogg already, and he is the one that brought us motivation, ability, and prompt for the things that we want to change within our organization. Not every change has the same recipe. The amount of ingredients and methods of preparation vary from behavior to behavior. Therefore, a culture of security can't be attained through a cookie cutter approach. If you work for a company that has a core value of compliance, your recipe for a culture of security will likely be different than that of a company that attains success through aggressive innovation. If you work in government, your recipe is probably going to be different than those in the private sector. We have to consider our company culture when we are building out our recipe. If we don't, it's like serving a T-bone steak to a vegetarian. It's not going to go well. How you use these 3 elements, motivation, ability, and prompt, in your recipe, in your company, will determine whether your program is chocolate ganache cake or liver and onions. So now to dive deeper into your recipe, I find it helpful to break behaviors down into 2 types: relational and transactional. Relational behaviors are those that involve influence. This is where motivation trumps all. Transactional behaviors are those where we don't need to know our stakeholder on a deep level. We just have to make it easy. The ingredients that we want to push for in these transactional behavior changes are in the ability and prompt space. If you find yourself having to go really heavy on the motivation ingredients in your transactional behavior change efforts, that's a warning signal that something isn't working. Either the change that you're asking people to make isn't easy enough, or they're not being prompted at the right time. And this is when it's really important to turn your resources inward versus outward. And what I mean by that is, rather than doubling down your education on the stakeholder, take time to work with your IT and security colleagues to figure out if there's anything that you could tweak or change to the process or technology to make things easier for the stakeholder. We talk so much about influencing the stakeholder, changing their behavior, making them aware. But The most mature companies that I have seen turn the mirror on themselves and ask, what can we change? We have to make our actions and the things that we are asking them to change so easy. Otherwise, they have to use way too much ability to do the right thing. Small amount of ability to do the right thing is where we want to go. So here's some of those take action bubbles again. These are things that we do within our company. You can try them too. To make things easier for everyone, we focus on accessibility. We partner with our UX team that gives us a grade on our Security Central website to measure our accessibility and our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We also are sure to test with screen readers for folks with low vision on things like our report phishing button, our external email warning banner, and our training. And then we're considerate of color blindness as well in your materials. Sometimes if the colors are too close together, it's really difficult for them to see. So that's something, really small things that you can take into consideration to help make things easier for people. So going back into relational behaviors, it's difficult to influence and motivate if there's no foundation of trust. We see companies littered with technical debt and that being the cause of major outages. But trust debt is just as important to pay attention to. Trust debt happens when we ignore the relational behavior change needed to create a culture of security. This is when we expect them to see the value through our eyes versus taking the time to really understand the business's needs. The key ingredient here is listening. Rice Krispie cereal actually made an entire campaign around listening. If you're not familiar, their slogan is Snap, Crackle, Pop. Not only the names of the little elf mascots, but the sound that the cereal makes when the milk is poured on it. They encouraged us to listen to our breakfast. So take a page from Snap, Crackle, and Pop. Take time to listen to your key stakeholders without defensiveness, without judgment, just listen. Relational behaviors take time to change. They're not easy. It's going to probably take more than one conversation to convince leadership to fund true cost of ownership so that they can make sure to patch and maintain their systems over time. It's going to take time to convince people of security by design rather than security bolted on at the end. This recipe uses trust, communication, empathy, and listening to motivate. It's really easy to say you must do this because of this law or this regulation or this policy. But this type of messaging isn't going to motivate. And I get that that's hard. Sometimes in your organizations, you have to use the stick approach versus the carrot approach because you're told that you have to do that. But really, we should try to be influencing in the way of shaping the message to show the business how we can help them achieve their goals. Remember, don't be liver and onions. I promise that's the last time you have to see that slide. To have a culture of security, relational behaviors need to be on the menu. Without them, we'll leave our stakeholders hungry and unsatisfied. So here's another take action. We have a approval process for any of the communications, awareness, anything that goes out from our group. And on it is a section to check tone. We use these questions as our North Star in 160 campaigns that we did last year, and we've been using this for years. Some of the best practices for tone that we use are, can it be said in more of a partnership fashion versus authoritarian? Are all the statements accurate? Especially when they're calling out leadership. This one in particular, for those that are using the stick approach, at least be transparent. So if you are going to escalate, if somebody does something, at least try to be transparent with them so they know kind of what they're getting into if they don't take the action. Is the length appropriate? Be kind to your stakeholders, keep things short and sweet, don't overwhelm their cognitive load. And then this one is really funny. Is there someone to contact for help? We see a lot of times in change efforts that's just sort of left out. If you're asking people to make a change, don't ghost them. Make sure that you're there to help them through the process. This isn't a bad Tinder date. You need to be there with them. I'm glad you left that. Okay, so now this is my favorite thing ever, the ambassador program. This is our signature dish. This is how we build that foundational relationship trust level. And when we first started with it, it wasn't that great. It was kind of checking the box. I don't think we were changing many behaviors. Over time, we've tweaked and we've changed our recipe, and now we're really cooking with gas. Pun intended. So here's some more take actions. You can please feel free to steal from anything that we have with the ambassadors. Also, my team that runs the ambassador program loves to talk about it. So if you want to benchmark on it, happy to do that with you. So we open it up to any of our employees, all 100,000 of them. It's open. The commitments are 1 year of monthly episodes, challenges, and community building activities. And the goal is really simple. It's just to be more secure at work and at home. And after you graduate from the program, you become an alumni. So we didn't want to lose the momentum that we have with them, but it's a lighter commitment than for quarterly commitments with more complex topics. And we measure our success through qualitative and quantitative metrics. So some of the tasty and nutritional bites that we have found over the years, especially this last year, is that we had a 68% engagement growth. We had a 97% graduation rate. Our ambassadors reduced their phishing risk 40% faster than employees, the rest of the employees that aren't in the program. They stated feeling more comfortable with reporting incidents, and as a result, they did report more incidents. And I know this is a touchy topic for a lot of people, insider threat, insider risk. A lot of times people don't want to get involved with it because of the whole big brother perception of it all. But in reality, it's a risk for all of us at some point and at some level. And research shows that companies with a healthy overall culture are less likely to have malicious insiders. I understand it can feel very overwhelming to try to influence your overall company culture, let alone your security culture, but using an ambassador program to combine these two goals has been really effective for us. And I came to this realization when our recent ambassador of the year said this in his testimonial about the program. He said, after going through the Global Security Ambassador Program, it made me feel more like part of the Medtronic family. In a time where quiet quitting is all the rage, this speaks volumes. So to wrap things up, a culture of security happens one spoonful at a time. A culture of security can't be attained through a cookie cutter approach, and a culture of security needs relational behaviors on the menu. I hope that you feel inspired after this week to get in the kitchen and experiment. Again, if we're not connected, connect with me, please. Thank you so much.